Welcome, Hola Community. Welcome to Blender Today Live, the bi-weekly live stream where we talk about Academy Award-winning software. Now, Blender didn't win an award, but a film made completely with Blender and Eevee Legacy even won an Oscar recently, Flow. It's a huge achievement for independent studios. For any Blender user, what you see in the community, it's been like this feeling like not just the Flow team, that the amazing artists that made the film happen, but also every user of Blender, of the same software, especially because the director Kins has shared so much of the behind the scenes and a real passion for Blender and the tool that allows to tell these kinds of stories, that it everybody in the community, I don't know if you've been reading the comments, so that's what my last 48 hours have been like. It's just crazy. So yes, huge congrats to the team. If you haven't seen it yet, let's do a quick recap, because also just insane.
Flow.
So the excitement is real. You can imagine.
Oscar win and nomination for this producing team.
The first film that Lavia won as well. The film was made across multiple studios in multiple countries.
And the second animated
But
film to be nominated for both
it
animated
must be
feature
really
and international
amazing. And
feature film.
look at that.
Thank you to the Academy. Thank you to Sideshow and Janus. Thank you to Blender. Thank you to my mom and dad. Thank you to my cats and dogs.
That's amazing. You should go check it out, because it is something very unusual, and it's a huge win for filmmakers, creators, anyone that supports open source and believes in the mission of Blender. If you go to blender.org, besides now being greeted with this beautiful message in About, you see the mission. Get the world's best 3D CG technology in the hands of artists of free open source software. So everyone should be able to create 3D CG, 2D as well, with free technical and creative production means and free access to the markets. Markets such as Hollywood, such as anywhere. So it's just awesome. And while we were at it, I just noticed that the Oscars channel website also published the question when they asked the questions, and they even clipped the beginning, because it was published in another channel. And then at the very beginning, the first question.
Congratulations over here. It's Mark Williams from British Cinematographer. When you accepted the award, you thanked Blender early on. Can you talk about the toolkit you used?
First question.
And how you used it, and how that helped make this film possible, and maybe what it means for animation going forward?
Yeah, Blender is a free open source software, which means everyone can have access to it. So any kid now has tools that are used to make these now Academy-winning films. So I think we're gonna see all kinds of exciting films being made from kids who might not have had a chance to do this before. And it's a great tool. It's not in any way a compromise. It's just as good as anything out there. And we're gonna use it also for my next film.
Drop the mic. There is no amount of money that can buy such an advertisement and endorsement. Really, it's insane. So anyways, thanks to Flow, to the team, for such a huge shout out in such a high profile place. So yeah, nice. I couldn't think of anything else in the last day. I think everybody here, even thanks also, because on Monday when we in the kickoff meeting, there was also cake, Oscars cake, celebrating the achievement of the team, the Flow team. So, well, this is also the splash screen for Blender 4.4, which is coming out in 14 days, 2 weeks. So not too bad. Let's see what other news. Oh, another big achievement. The studio team downstairs, the Blender studio, they have achieved the vertical slice. It's a vertical slice is a term, is a like a milestone for game development usually, where it's like how is the game going to look if it was completely done, but not the entire game, of course. Otherwise, you just make it, right? You just make the entire game. It's a vertical slice. So the one part, one screen, one room, one level, or actually less than one level, but just a vertical slice of the entire pipeline, just final art, final everything as much as possible, just to get an idea, a feeling of how is this going to look. And then after that is done, they can continue filling up all the remaining art that needs to be done, other levels, and so on and so forth. And they managed, they did it. So you should check it out. I think this is under a paywall, so I'm not sure if actually you, yeah, okay, you can read. You can't see the images, but for that you need a well, on YouTube you can watch them for free. You can watch you can follow them for free, but in production logs they are for subscribers. But the people that here in the studio are also contributing to Blender, so it's a nice way to contribute. That's it. I think I don't have any more news other than what is new in Blender today. How's everyone in the chat, by the way? I'm having a look at the chat here. People just mentioned that Gins say thanks to Blender before mom and dad. Priorities. Yeah, well, it's that happens. I would probably have done the same sometimes. You know, priorities like, oh no, I shouldn't forget to say thanks to this and that, and then, wow, crazy. Okay, let's see what is new in Blender. Remember that we are streaming live, so I'm reading your comments, and also I made a post on Blender Community where you can see all the changes and more that I'm going to be sharing this week. Plus, there is the comment section where you can leave a comment, log in with your Blender ID and leave a comment, so I get to answer them towards the end of the show, which shouldn't be too long from now. Famous last words, because there's not that much that has changed, because the team is focused on the release of Blender 4.4, so a lot of bug fixes, actually 114 bug fixes, plus 99 cleanups and a lot of refactors. If you look here, refactor, there's a whole section with like tons of changes. So yeah, let's see. Should I use Blender or 3ds Max? The first question. Well, if you're on a show called Blender Today, you might know the answer already. Although 3ds Max, if you want to, speaking of open source, I don't know if you heard that the Command and Conquer source code, the video game, has been Command and Conquer's GitHub. Well, Zero, many of them are on GitHub now, and one of the dependencies is 3ds Max for SDK. So now that the game is open source, I wonder if you don't remember the game, as it's amazing. I still play it to this day. It was awesome. And now that it's open source, I hope so. Let's hope the community does something with it. And the first step could be to remove dependencies of 3ds Max and replace with open source 3D software. Wouldn't that be nice? Let's continue. So, sorry for the sidetrack, but it's open source, right? It's always fun to see this. And also because they on their blog post on Steam, they mentioned that it's for game preservation reasons, to keep, to not let, which is something that Blender itself went through. Remember that, well, Blender was, on the Blender code was actually put in a drawer, and thanks to the donations of hundreds of people, the code managed to become free for everybody. So software preservation, game preservation. Let's see. The first change as of this week, let's go through. I mean, some of them are just mentions of changes under the hood, so I'm gonna go through most of them rather quick. Animation. Let's see what is new in animation. So let me add the window here. I'm gonna place this above my head, and over here, And let's see. So the animation module is still working on Blender 4.4, which is the first release of the one of the biggest features of 4.4, which is action slots. One of the tasks they did in the last few weeks was to update descriptions and text explaining about this. What is the what do the properties mean now that there is slots involved? For example, add an F curve to the action. It no longer means just adding an F curve to where. So add an F curve to the first slot of this action, creating the necessary layer, strip, and slot if necessary. Super nice. So thanks, Sivren, for the attention to detail and making this more. Tooltips are. We should do a pass on tooltip. Tooltips are the best. Today I discovered a tooltip, a very interesting tooltip, very useful one. You know what the image edit? Well, I was going through. What do they say? Manipulate objects in a 3D environment. The second one, image editor. You know the tooltip for that? View the image, the image, not an image, or even an image sequence or a video or no. View the image. Some of them are geometry nodes. And this is even a new one. Why didn't we put more effort in it? Some of them are more descriptive, like the spreadsheet is also very new. Explore geometry data in a table. The file browser doesn't have any, and because the asset browser is a copy paste of the file browser, it also doesn't have tooltips. So if you want to contribute to Blender and don't know how to code or want to get started into updating tooltips, is always a nice thing to do because people rely on them. Next, it's also in the documentation, so it's also good to have. Let's continue. The next one is add an array function. This is a convenience function to basically, well, it's actually here in the code. You can, this is for add-on developers mostly or script developers. So it's a way to create an F curve, but also making sure that if the slot doesn't exist, then if the layer doesn't exist, add a new layer, which at the moment only support one layer, but also the same for strips. And everything that needs to be is a convenience function. And make F curves only report if the curves that ID if also under the hood convenience tooling. Oops. Next, A for assets. Avoid allocating empty preview when unsupported on mark as as. So this is also a small fix, but when you mark something as asset, Blender tries to create a thumbnail. Well, sometimes the Blender already uses a thumbnail like a backup thumbnail for it, and now it will actually check if there will be a fallback automatic preview created or not before actually making showing that there is a preview available. So the remove preview operator doesn't show as available when it's really not, because there's no preview. And connected to that, this is an actual feature, which is batch create remove previews for all the selected assets. Have you ever noticed that you could actually select multiple assets in the asset browser? You can select multiple if you do B, but you couldn't do anything with that because when you drag and drop, it only drags one object, one asset. You could basically do well, maybe delete, not even X delete. No, yeah, you can do anything until now. Now there is support for batch creation and removal of previews for the selected assets. You can generate a preview to refresh the refresh icon, the two arrows, generate preview from object, or remove preview altogether. Neat. Which other operations do you think could be added to this batch generation? There is a task already to how to deal with adding multiple objects. In this case, there are brushes, doesn't make any sense. But if I had objects, if I select multiple and I drag and drop, you see it only adds the active one, the last one I have. So it doesn't really help. And there's a task. And it's actually my task to come up with potential solutions on what to do when you leave multiple objects. And I'm gonna make use of the live stream here, this audience, otherwise without you here, this wouldn't make any sense. And what do you think should happen? Maybe don't answer now or leave a comment, but then leave a comment on the video so I can actually see it after the live stream. What do you think it should happen when you drag and drop multiple objects? Options are: 1, place them all in, like you could choose you could choose a few behaviors. 1, place them all under the cursor, or at the beginning, at the center of the world, 0, 0, 0, or lay them one next to each other, calculate the bounds of each object, and then place them one after the other in line, or maybe on a grid. How do you define the size of the grid? Is that really that common to make a grid? As in, because you have to decide, okay, how many rows, how many columns. Yeah. Place median point at 3D cursor. So select all of them and then place them at the 3D cursor. So what do you think should happen here? Because there is a task already that I made a design task about it that I started the other day. Still work in progress, but it's about adding a spawn location for adding assets. So when you right click, add asset, doesn't exist yet, but the idea is that it will exist. That there is like a spawn location where you can choose where it will appear, like 3D cursor or custom location, and so on and so forth. I like spawn location for video games, but also because of Spawn, the character from the comics. I always tried to draw this when I was a kid. I would fail miserably, but it was so badass. Spawn. All right. Next. Sorry that I'm mixing like feature request, asking you for feedback and showing you new features, a bit of a mess, but today there's not that many new features, so that's why I'm trying to make use of the live stream. Utilities in Blender line commands. Utilities that are also mainly for internal use that Blender can use in other places. Brush assets. Add material to the linked editable assets. These the material type of assets was not shown, and there were 2 bug reports actually about the brush asset broken if a new file is open. It turns out that it had to do with that the material wasn't shown as a linkable asset, linked editable asset. So yeah, basically it's a bug fix, but it also is part of the having assets more unified, the whole workflow. OpenEXR 3.3.2 was updated, and that will see some, I think, a change in lower below in the OpenEXR section. The cleanup section is huge, lots of cleanups, very clean. Blender is very clean. Most of these changes shouldn't introduce any functional change. Actually, any of these should include any functional change. Maybe a little bit of a optimization, or sometimes introduce bugs, but these cleanups are often needed, and it's good that they happen during the during this time of alpha times for 4.5. Color management, dithering, consistency, and performance improvements. Oh, nice. Adas is back with optimization. So dithering, consistency, and performance improvements. Let's see. So float byte rendered image dithering uses triangle noise algorithm. Keep using the same algorithm, but with some improvements to fix some issues. Let's jump to the numbers. I'm curious about how much faster it is. Could I find this? Optimizations, thread safe changes. The more CPUs cores you use, the worse the repetition. Performance and image comparisons in the PR. And the performance is slightly faster now. from 99 milliseconds to 94 milliseconds on a test of converting a 4K image on CPU. Still promising, and it seems to do a good job. Thank you. And I actually seen some more changes by Aras this week, so let's see which others. It might be on the sequencer section. The Compositor has a new float 4 type, which is a way to use for the vectors when needed and not all the time. So Blender could have to I think it's for memory usage. For example, reduce vector type components to 3. Previously the vector type in the Compositor had 4 components that accommodated float 4 types, while the last component was ignored for the rest of the vector types. So I guess that is, yeah, that sounds like memory stuff, that you have too many components when you don't need them. Now you can discard them, but now you have specific type, and I guess it's related also to this. Support vector outputs for image node. Oh no. Dispatch adds support for vector outputs in the image node. Previously, only float and color outputs were supported, and vector outputs were implicitly treated as color ones. Yeah, I always use color and vector interchangeably, but now I can also export output, sorry. Neat. Implement link validation. Another change by Omar. Dispatch implements link validation for Compositor node trees. All links are valid in the Compositor since there is implicit conversion, but this is needed for link gather search operations. Interesting. So I guess this comes from the geometry nodes, where you can have, well, it's very easy to make some links not work, right? You have a conversion from point cloud to curve or to volume, or, well, maybe those are convertible, but some that when the link becomes red, that seems to be coming for the Compositor. Neat. Track update count for caching validation. Dispatch refactors static caching validation of images by tracking an update count. Images now store a runtime update count that is updated every time the image is tagged for update. Though this only supports images, they are not covered by the copy on valuation. Alright, more robust compositing. I'll take it. Core, add warning when opening deprecated big endian saved blend files. Yeah, big endian they're gonna be deprecated for 4.5. Files with save as big endian will be deprecated in 4.5 and will not be supported anymore in Blender 5.0. This decision was discussed a long time ago. It was announced on Dev Talk, and 4.5, which has support until 2027 for 2 more years, will be the last one to support it. So there is enough time to switch. The last big endian platform typically officially supported by Blender was the Mac Power PC, which was discontinued in 2006. And the last official release for it was Blender 263 in 2012. Yep. Wow. Just recently I was looking at the download releases page, and because I wanted to check which one was the first release with the Compositor, which 240 was the one with the orange. Probably it's either that one or 242, I believe, and the Blender was like 6 megabytes. Blender was 6 megabytes. That's awesome. Also, someone asked the other day on somewhere online, and if hey, I need Blender for 32-bit, and made me realize that the last Blender for 32-bit official release for Blender 32-bit, you would think it was like 2.7 or 2.6, 2.5, really long ago, but no, actually Blender 2.80. So there is a version of Blender 2.8 that is officially supported for 32-bit. That is great news for software preservation. I mean, Blender is supported, right? Because it's open source, right? But it's good to see that 2.80 at least had a bit of 32-bit. 281 no longer had official releases, but probably you can compile it for it. Okay, cool. Time to move on. We have a bunch of curve changes. Operators to bring it. Okay, this is the new curves, bringing more tools from the old curve data block. Separate to object operator. Nice. Implement join operator. So you have separate and join. Add split operator. So you can now split operators to curves. It should have the same behavior as the corresponding operator for legacy curves. Nice. Thank you, Laurani Duburas. And Jack for merging it. And a refactor extrude to use for each selected point range per curve. Nice. Nice to see contributions from the community. Next, the cycles. Oops. Oh. Excitement for cycles. The cycles. Well, I mean, cycles is we should applaud cycles. Even though cycles is not an Oscar winning, not Academy Award worth it yet, apparently. Nah, it would probably be. Probably. Although, Flow, right? Flow, Oscar winning film was rendered in Eevee without the compositor, without the without cycles, without probably many parts of Blender. It's like crazy, right? Makes you think how it's just storytelling, good stories. We're so worried sometimes about the pixel perfect, the reflection, this and that, the making things. But yeah, let's move on. It's not everybody's goal to win an Oscar in life, of course. But again, maybe an award on their market. Rudimentary utilities to plot light tree. GraphViz, debug tools, fixed library search paths for HipRT. Okay. This comes from LiveAMD HipRT. More HipRT integration and GFX 12 support. I heard great things about these changes. I wonder, is this 2.0? Oh, is this 4.4? I'm not sure this will. I don't know. I'm sure about the current state of this, so take it with a grain of salt. Although I think this is for graphics cards that are not even released yet, so don't even. We can just move on. But it's cool though that card manufacturers are making Blender support hardware from the future beforehand, so people are ready for it. Refactor light. Oh, nice. Well. You don't see this often. Breckman Lommel, the original creator of Cycles, committed. Refactor lights to be objects. This is an intermediate step towards making light actual geometry. Light is now a subclass of geometry, which simplifies some code. The geometry is not added to the VVH yet, which would be the next step, and improve light intersection performance with many lights. This makes object attributes work on lights. That is interesting. Is this another step towards not having world anymore? Replacing the world in a world where there's no world, but a dome light, maybe, for example. Interesting. This is closer than I thought. It was like super in the future. That's so cool. So when was this committed? Last week, 24th of... Okay, so then my build should already have it, which means that if I have visibility options, so these visibility options now should work with lights. Interesting. Hey, what do you think about this? Okay, time for sorry. Yesterday I was doing something in Blender at home. I was like, and I've seen this in many tutorials where people are, working on a thing here, and then with the camera, it's like I was here in the camera and I wanted to add some I want to enable the whatever thing for the limits, right? And then you have to go dig somewhere in the settings, go to the camera settings, go to the viewport display panel, and then enable it here. So I was like, wait a minute. This panel is called viewport display. Wouldn't it be nice to have a panel that is called viewport display in the viewport? I mean, I know we shouldn't repeat things, we shouldn't duplicate content. We already have enough with the tool being twice. Like these tools have been duplicated. Although soon you will be able to hide some of this stuff so you can get rid of it. But the item panel, if you don't have any custom property, the item panel is really empty. It only has one option, transform. So what if the viewport display panel was also here? Because these are viewport settings for the active object. So it kind of makes sense, right? So I was like, did I just have an epiphany, or I'm just too stupid and I'm not seeing the issues? And then the moment this panel goes here, I'm saying duplicate, having it in both places. So to not lose memory, how do you call it? Muscle memory. But people might be asking like, but I also want depth of field, but I also want, and then this becomes a properties panel. Or should this be item or properties, and then the entire properties be here? And then, no, okay, never mind. Put it in the view tab. No, not a view, because view is for the actual view. The view is for this view, this. And this is only for the active object. But also, some objects have two viewport display settings. One for the actual properties of the data of the camera, and then the object level ones. So you would have to have both. And why is the display as for a camera here? If this doesn't work, why is it? I mean, it's grayed out, but just maybe not show it. Is in case you have two objects selected, maybe. Anyways, let's see. Let's move on. So, Falk, a developer in the chat says, I just posted a pretty big proposal for Grease Pencil. It would be awesome if you could show that too in the Grease Pencil section. Oh, nice. Okay, send me the maybe the URL without the dev talk part, so you can share it in the channel, and I'll see it, or maybe leave it as a comment on Blender Today. Nice. Hey, Blender Today is becoming a Blender tomorrow, as in the future. But that's why we do it this live, right? Otherwise, why even? The other features are drop inline hint on Lightree PDF. Dropping the inlining hint and reverting to the default inlining gives a 4% speed up on Classroom and other scenes on an Arc B580, Intel Arc B580. Hey, 4% speed up. I'll take that. Any more graphs? No. We can check the daily benchmarks to see if there is a performance impact on metal. Neat. Performance updates. More one API. This is the backend that Intel graphics cards use. Remove, but then adding back. Use linear memory improvements and more inlining attributes for a 1 to 6% overall performance improvement in rendering benchmark scenes on an Intel Arc B580. Is this just like all Blender? No, it's one API only. All right, let's go for extensions. Extensions. Use dynamically created link to the money. Okay, this is a fix. And when the extensions were developed, the documentation always pointed to the development version, and now it points to the actual version for the actual Blender. Good. Add help target to the make file. Oh, nice. Did you know about all the Blender commands that you have available? So you can do -- help, and then you get like all these help and commands. Well, there are a few for extensions. I don't know if you knew. but you can do extension build, extension, well, you can do all kinds of things, but there are ones for building extensions, and they come really handy. So now there is a help target for the makefile. Nice. So you can check how to test Blender, test CLI Blender. Let's go back, add progress test to test CLI, also for extensions, and a cleanup, removing unused operators. Okay, how many fixes do we have? We said over 114 or so. GLTF exporter, cycles, point cloud, geometry nodes. Support relative paths in import nodes. Hey, this is a fix that is also a feature. Support relative paths. Nice. Yeah, you see, this is why we shouldn't skip fixes every week, right? We should, if we have the time, at least let's skim through them, because sometimes you discover features or things that were broken forever ago and becomes a feature. They were crashed when saving a vector image in the file output. Interesting. GLTF exporter, bunch of fixes by Julian. Autospace, audio back fixes even. Cycles, performance regressions. Oh, after the recent refactor to light objects. A bunch of them. So all of these were not reported. And then we have the list of reported items. Also cycles, Grace Pencil, keymap editor, issues, nodes. Oh, there are some really cool changes to nodes. Crazy Space, Grace Pencil. So many bug fixes. Okay, I'm gonna... I already seen some of this, so... Because I just said we shouldn't just skip them, we should skim through them. Okay, I think we can... you can also find it on BlenderToday, the whole list. Let's move on to... Whoops. Ghost. Wayland. So, how many of you Linux users are still using X11 for your, like, for Blender itself? Because I just learned that X11, well, I just learned, it was kind of assumed that there would be no big new features for X11 because of Wayland. But for that to be the case, is Wayland up to the task for your everyday usage of Blender? Please let me know. Let us know in the comments somewhere, because it is important. If there are issues with Wayland, just please X11 because of NVIDIA. But hasn't NVIDIA worked on this recently? I heard, because even the new Fedora for the 41, they don't even have the XOR packages installed anymore by default. I think it's the first release they do that. All right, let's move on. I was just wanted to check. Oh, no way. Ghost Wayland actually introduced support for large, well, not large per se, cursors. However, now the custom cursors will change size based on the DPI. So high resolution screens now will select the larger custom cursors on Wayland. Previously, the small cursors would be scaled up. So now they look a bit nicer. And there is another UI task for this. Then we have, we can move on to GPU. Actually, all this internal GPU tests, GPU thread safe compilations, a lot of work behind the scenes now that more GPU is being used for the Compositor, Vulkan stuff. Geometry section has one item: geometry support convert attribute for curves and point clouds. Nice. So it's a new operator for the drop-down menu to the right of the attribute list for curves and point cloud geometries. For these geometry types, the operator can run in edit mode too, unlike meshes. However, there is a new update regarding that, so I'm not gonna spoil anything, but if you have a point cloud object in the attributes list, you should be able to convert now. Nice. Remember that point clouds are still experimental, so you need to go to experimental, make sure you have it enabled on developer extras, and turn on new point cloud type. New as in it's been there for a couple of years, I think. Geometry nodes has a few elements, these items this week in the news. One of them makes CSV parser more reliable and faster. So last time we discussed that CSV was introduced. Many people were excited about it, but apparently it wasn't reliable or too fast enough. Now it is, thanks to Jack. Look, nice. So reliability is improved by unit tests, properly handled quoted fields, more accurate detection of column types, and overall improvements. So cool. And more CSV. Improve multi-threading and avoid redundant work in CSV import. Nice. Apparently, once the feature was in, many people started using it and reporting issues or maybe sharing on social media. So it's good to see developers are on top of it. Support creating important nodes when dropping file paths. Oh, nice. You can now drag and drop OBJ, STL, PLY, and CSV files, and this will make a new import node. Note that this is still hidden behind an experimental feature flag, which is probably called new file import nodes. That is awesome. So if I go geometry nodes, and then I have, is it a new menu import? Import CSV, OBJ, PLY, STL. That's amazing. Cool. Quality of life. What a quality. Yeah, this is huge quality of life improvement. How much? I'm always curious on how much work it is. Okay, you need to know the lines to edit and how much, right? To edit and where to edit, right? But drag and drop, like these things are such a huge improvement that, and sometimes the code is not that much. So using those commits as a reference, you could contribute to this quality of life improvements that's often developers miss because they're focused on making, I don't know, OBJ import work, not the drag and drop part, for example. And it's always curious to see how can I help as well with this. Next, more features. GLTF, new option to export a vertex color with a given name. Nice, you can specify the name of the vertex color output to export. And better slot management. This is regarding action slots. Make sure to create multiple animation when needed. Use action name for the active slots and action name slot name display for additional animations. Nice to see GLTF making use of the slot management. Well, we arrived to Grease Pencil. There is 3 changes plus a task that we should look at that Folk just mentioned. Grease Pencil, make brush asset pinned materials local. Keeping this as linked data blocks to the brush does not match the idea that assets should generally be appended and leads to some confusing situations with linked materials on objects. Now use either a local material with matching weak library reference or make a local copy if the material does not exist. Nice. So this is related to reference, a bug report, and the other task that we already seen. There's a known limitation that if the linked brush asset material is edited and there is already a local copy, this local copy will remain unchanged and will be used by future strokes as well. Internationalization is an ongoing task, as always, thanks to Bastian, Damian, and Gabriel, and everybody working on translate.blender.org, which, if you're not familiar with it, is the place where you can help translating Blender's UI, but also Blender's manual. Really important. UI, yes, it's sexy. Everybody wants to tweak and update and work on the UI, the visible parts. In fact, 4 languages have been translated fully, but the manual needs some love because I don't think any manual is translated, any language is translated fully other than English. Slovak is like right there. French is really close. So if you're a French speaker, you can help. If you're a Spanish speaker, por favor, ayuda. 73%. Next. Image. Ooh, Aras enters the chat. Wait, no. I'm missing the DevTalk thread. Yeah, you forgot DevTalk thread. Yeah, I know. Sorry. But did anybody share the link to it? No. Was it on here as a comment? Yeah, here's a file descriptor. All right, let's see. This is an unusual request on BlenderToday, but an important one because we have people here that can give us feedback right away. Grease pencil, material, stroke, fill, workflow, revamp, and feedback. This is a proposal about revamping the way artists create fills and the way grease pencil materials work, especially the stroke and fill material toggles. So these 2 checkboxes basically. So the current state, in the current version of Blender, the grease pencil material holds the settings for the stroke and the fill shading. Additionally, the material dictates if the stroke fill is shown or not, and can be toggled with the checkboxes, these 2. So yeah, it's up to the material. The advantage of having these toggles is that it makes it easy to toggle on and off. While it's very common for artists to adjust other settings of a material after drawing strokes, it's really uncommon to want to toggle the fill or stroke. And that's, yeah, at least that's my case. When you want to draw a fill and you don't have a material ready, there are multiple steps involved. First, create a material with the fill toggle enabled, change the settings, select the draw tool, and then draw the fill stroke. What's the proposal? Oh, the checkboxes are gone. The proposal is let the strokes themselves decide if they show their stroke fill or not the materials. Yes. Well, to me that's an instant yes. Let's see what is the rest. What is your first reaction to it as a user? Go thumbs up and thumbs down in the chat. The material settings no longer have toggles for the stroke and fill. Instead, the users decide when creating new strokes if they should be stroked or filled. The draw tool has a setting for stroke fill. So yeah, to me this makes sense. This is how it works on other tools. And it's also much more flexible. You don't have to make a new material just if you want to fill or stroke. You just decide in one go. The same applies to the primitive tools. The fill bucket always creates fill strokes. Like other stroke tools, users can toggle the stroke fill in edit mode from the right-click context menu. Ah, nice. Toggle stroke or toggle fill. Simply by selecting the strokes and then using the operator. So it's a huge change in workflow, so feedback is required. There is a working prototype that can be downloaded on the Blender builds. Disclaimer, use this build at your own risk. Yeah, please do not use in production yet. However, here is a link to the DevTalk forums where you can leave your feedback. But what is, I believe in the first filling, you know, like it's like first reaction of, usually sometimes it goes well. Of course, then you have to think of the implications. But usually the first reaction often leads to like, I don't know, at least from experience, often is like, oh, after 2 weeks of meetings, we came back to my first reaction. But it's important to have those. So far, so good. Thumbs up. This is a petting hand, I think. Super nice write-up. I'm gonna give it a heart and move on with what's new in the image buffer, because we saw Aras entering the chat with the words faster, speed up, threaded, which are always nice to read next to his name. All right, let's start. Faster orthogonal image rotation. So speed up the function that is used for rotation. For example, when auto-rotating videos that were shot sideways on a phone. I think it's even a feature that he implemented time ago, right? Wasn't there a video example with a dog? Performing rotation of a Full HD resolution HDR float video frame goes from 20 milliseconds to 5 milliseconds. Nice. That's cool. Much faster. And imagine this applies to like, so every second, what it used to take 20 milliseconds, then every time you run this, and every frame update, what used to take 20 milliseconds, now 5, which means, yeah, if you do this multiple times or just playback overall, it's going to be much faster. Thank you. Unify color space, transforms threaded for non-threaded options. Okay, sorry, I'm going to jump straight to the numbers. So the total render time went from 49 seconds down to 44. One of the single threaded parts was the color space conversion with the movie clip code. So threaded color space transforms. Nice. Multi-thread image buffer alpha under color. Numbers are very impressive. So the function is now multi-threaded. So an example of a 4K resolution image, mixing various transparency values in a source. What used to take 10 milliseconds to compute is now less than 2 milliseconds. Huge. What used to take 14.6 is now 8.8 milliseconds. The smaller speed up is because of the memory bandwidth limited. But this is kind of huge, right? Nice, awesome. So cool. Speed up, clean up, image buffer, display buffer, acquire. So this went from, there's also threading change. This went from 4K resolution that during playback used to take 10.7 milliseconds to now 7.7 milliseconds. All these tests are running on Windows on a Ryzen 5950X. So it's a really good CPU. It's not the latest, and so it's a good measure, but it's a really good of the previous generation. So pretty nice. Thanks for this, and it also has a ton of CPU cores, so it's a good example. Awesome. Thank you, Aras, for making Blender better and faster and stronger every day, pretty much. Modeling. I'm curious about what could happen if I saw somewhere on a thread, somewhere on a task on projects.blender.org about speeding up well, not speeding up, even like implementing thumbnails or speeding up the thumbnail cache. And I think thumbnails cache should be nuked from Blender and done from scratch, probably because of the it always seems to have issues here and there, but the improvements that were done by Aras recently actually made it a lot more stable to edit, but they still seem that they could use make over. Maybe supporting scenes thumbnails, mayhaps. Modeling, let's jump into modeling. Let's know more feature requests. Support normalization with locked vertex groups in N panel. It's not N panel, it's N sidebar, but I know people still call it N panel. Actually, there's even extensions that call it N panel. We used to have N panel because that is what it was in 2.49. The N, it used to be a floating panel in Blender. Blender 249, I don't know if you... It's just to teach people, to explain how the grandiose days of movie making and Blender open sourceness were. Yeah, this used to be floating panels, like here. You should be able to see the beauty of a floating panel that you can just move around anywhere you want. And then that become a sidebar, so that's why people still call it end panel. Also, there's nothing to do. The end was just close to the keyboard, I guess, and I don't think it relates to anything. N. It's not related to properties. All right. So the change, actually, sorry, Andy, for I kind of got sidetracked here. So the problem was that when a user is editing a mesh that is parented by an armature and selects a vertex, they are shown a vertex weights menu in the items tab. This menu shows a normalized button. However, this didn't work with locked vertex groups, and now it does. This PR changes the existing normalized function that is operator calls and uses another existing normalized function that accounts for locking groups. That's so cool. So this now should work in locked groups. Neat. Modifiers. Ooh. Visual geometry to objects operators. And actually, I've seen this on Jack Luke social account not long ago. So let me look at it. Oh, what is it? March 3. On Saturday, we had a Blender meetup in Berlin. Nice, Blender meetups. Okay, so there, I think I saw this here. We just... okay, a bunch of features. If you want to have like a Blender today of geometry nodes, just follow Jack on social media. There was one mentioning the modifiers that you can convert to modifier. Oh, this is November. Oh, I mixed it. Yeah. Oh, is it this is then the one? Because it's a new operator that allows you to convert the... Yes, it is the same. So when you have multiple objects and or instances, now you can convert visual geometry to objects, which will split them into individual objects. So you no longer have to split and then do split again, which is also impossible to split because an object like Suzanne has the eyes separated from the mesh, so they would be considered different objects if you split them. So hey, nice. Visual geometry to objects operator is in the same panel where you do the split, the separate. Ah no, convert. Sorry. Let's look at it. Object. Apply visual geometry to objects. Pretty nice. Things you couldn't do before otherwise. Neat. And in this case it's also very, very useful. For trees, tree trunks. Oh, it even makes instances. Nice. All right. Next, nodes. In the nodes section, this is things that apply to all the nodes node editors. Support file path filter for import nodes. Currently, when selecting a file path using a file browser, there's no filter active, making it harder than necessary to find the correct file. This patch adds a proper filter. Something similar is done when using the GLTF import from the menu. Nice. There is a filter now. When you open the file browser, we'll filter. Quality of life. Thank you, Jack. Always draw panels as collapsible in the tree view. Yeah, this is more like a fix-ish. It makes it so every time you do a panel, you should draw a panel, it will not only be indented, but also show the drop down, because that way you can tell them apart more easily. Support Boolean inputs as toggle in panel headers. This is also a huge quality of life improvement thanks to Fork. And look at this beauty. Look at this beauty. So if you can't tell what's going on here, it's because it's an amazing feature that fits right into Blender. Let me explain. So this is a custom geometry nodes modifier, custom UI. The way to enable or disable a setting, what people would use is just have like an enable checkbox at the beginning of the list, and that would apply to the rest. But now you can make it so a property can be marked as this is the toggle for the entire panel. So because it's inside of a panel, Blender will draw it here in the top left, similar to panels everywhere else in Blender, and also inside of the node. This is super neat for making things more, you know, as integrated with Blender. So cool. So you basically select a panel and then you add a panel toggle or mark here. So you select an existing toggle and then you make panel toggle. You make it into the panel toggle, and that would automatically mark it so it will be a checkbox in the top left. So neat. Awesome. Can I do it live? Should I do this live and then shame myself at a panel and then add a panel toggle? Hey, no, I did it. I managed. Well, there's nothing inside of the panel, but you can see it here because I don't have anything here. How you can set the default, if it's on and off, single value, hide the modifier. But if I should do it with a property. I can mark it here, just so it's not grayed out. You get the idea. So neat. Blender working better with Blender. Music to my ears. Support panel toggles in Materials tab. This adds support for panel toggles to the Materials tab in the Properties editor. At the same time, it also starts making use of layout panels, which offer a more standardized UI and the ad hoc. No way. Is this what I think it is? So Materials now. Okay. It might not look like a big thing to you. Do you notice if your eye is trained in Blender, you will notice something different here, just by here. Can you tell something? The background color is different. This is a small thing, but it basically inside of Blender, this is using the layout panel, the API, and which is an actual panel. Before, this used to be all the same color. It was really hard to tell when a panel starts and the other begins. It's a small thing you barely notice, but it makes a difference when you have long panels. This also is awesome. It's awesome. And also, I don't know if there is a checkbox here. Where would that be? It adds support for panel. Okay, so there's support for panel toggles, but there's no for shading nodes. Interesting. Awesome. Just great news. Great news. Again, Blender working better with Blender. That's how you get Oscars. Object mode. Oh, this by itself is another that deserves object mode. For how long this has been around? Remember, every time you try to convert an object, like you go to object, well, you try to convert in some mode, and Blender will complain because you cannot convert Blender objects into other modes, like other types, so from curve to object or curve to mesh or so on, if you were in object mode, or like if you were if you're in edit mode, for example, and now you can. This alone is a huge quality of life. Next, OpenEXR, DWA compression mapping. This applies compression, which before they changed something with WA. By the way, DWA stands for DreamWorks Animation Compression. before the change, something that would be 750 is now 175. That's a huge compression change. Wow, nice. Good, just by changing mappings. Nice, thank you, Sergey. Next, point clouds. Let's give it a point clouds. This makes for the third week in a row that we see point clouds getting attention, bringing the features that we see in other object types in Blender back to the standards, right? Like join operator, select random, draw selection overlay, integration with transverse cursor snapping, support view selected operator in edit mode. Again, we're Blender working with Blender. Awesome. Thank you, Hans, Dalai, and Philip. Next, Python APIs. A few. I wasn't going to mention this, but actually it's coming from a bug report, and it's a convenience function so the user, because there's no convenient way for an add-on developer to show the user keymap items. User meaning the keymap item, which is edited in the keymap editor, not the original keymap item created by the add-on itself. So this is actually related to another bug report, and but I think it was the Mater who used this in a 3D viewport pie menus add-on, also in the extensions platform. Super nice. SVG, batch import SVG as curve files. Thanks to Maxine Cots, we can now batch import multiple SVG, an SVG as multiple curve files. Follows the same code as GLTF to handle both single and multiple files. Nice. Blender working with Blender. Sculpt. Expose location parameter for sculpt mask by color. Okay, so this is a bit niche. This is a new parameter by the tool called mask by color. So when you mask by color, you pick a color and you mask by that color. But you have to, with the cursor, you have to specify where. So you get the location from the cursor. However, when running tests or scripts, making a script to pick a color from a specific place, it's hard to replicate because you don't have the cursor position. So now you can actually define the location in the code, as a property. So now you can. Again, really niche. Another thing that is niche is to debug. So in the spreadsheet, now the sculpt and hide attributes are shown if a debug value is shown, like the debug value 4001. And that is related to something I would like to do for Blender 5.0, which is to split the experimental section and the debugging section into two different things. So the developer extras would only show developer tools, like a new debug section or something like that for developer tools. That way, it's only for developers, and developers can add these kind of things like 4001. Why do you have to remember a number for debugging? You could just be a toggle, make life easier, expose it to the user. But yeah, the debug is basically this menu, which I don't know if many of you know, but it's a number that the developers may mark, and they use it to expose certain things. So you might find secret options in the debug menu. We need menus in the spreadsheet header, says Hans, and I completely agree. So the spreadsheet doesn't have view menu. It could definitely have view menu. So it's like here, like this, view menu. And I saw you have a task on moving the path down to here to the bottom left. Totally agree. We should get on to this. It actually makes a bit of the footer. It makes makes sense here, I think, because this is kind of akin to a path of like scripts that have the footer also. There's a text internal, and I think they should show the name, the path if you have a file, I think here. So it's kind of similar concept. And then we will have a view menu, but also that will be a debug option. So I guess you could have view, debug, and then option for debugging. But also that could be exposed in the preferences, because you want to expose this wide, Blender wide, not just in the you know, maybe don't want to expose it on a per editor basis. Or anyways, let's continue. So in the user interface section, there is a bunch of features. One, vertically aligned grip icon. Okay, this is very subtle. The grip icon wasn't vertically aligned. No, this is a new icon. We're not using this anywhere. So it's okay. It's a new. It's good to have. I think I saw. Yeah, there is a pull request that is using this, but I don't think we're using this anywhere. Vertical grip to resize something horizontally, or to grab something horizontally. We might use it for grabbing tabs when we have editor tabs. Add icons to represent error conditions. Yep. So when something is not found or there's an error, now there's icons for that. Icon not found. So these are also things that you can use yourself in your add-ons. Character replacement not found and character not defined. Harley also made this improvement to fix what I complained about on the last episode, that the properties editor used to show a set active modifier hint in the status bar when didn't really make any sense, because I was in a completely different tab back then. So that has been fixed. Thank you, Harley. Then a small change by Rextia to fix a label of the file browser used to say select inverse when it is invert, that we have that elsewhere in Blender. Eye candy. Look at this. Is ugly. This is not. It's ugly. Basically, I don't know if you can tell, but the border of this window of this editor no longer shows if the window only has one editor, because it doesn't really make sense. So it's just hidden, just invisible. You can still perform all the actions from here, but it just looks so much nicer. Select operator name improvements. Yep, the select operators were a bit confusing. Select menu now says select list. When you can select the list when you hold the key to select multiple. When you press Alt, hold Alt or Option to select multiple. Now it will say select list, toggle list. So I think I can show it here. So here, if I hold Alt, you can see in the status bar that it goes center list, select list. Nice, as a hint that people can select multiple. I don't know if you're not familiar with it. Alt click brings this select list option. Next, show change frame animation operator as to set frame solo preview in the sequencer. This doesn't even have a review. It just went in. Okay. This PR adds a new property that the operator called set preview that enables this feature and then shows the name set frame solo preview. Ensure invisible scroll bar tracks are opaque and shrink scroll bars with add. Oh yes, this is an improvement. Oh, I really like this change. It's also very subtle. I don't know if you can tell when you open Blender. Now the window will be a bit more quiet. I don't know if you notice. Down here, the scroll bar, the horizontal scroll bar, no longer is like 5-10 pixels tall. Is small, like the ones we are used to in the everywhere else in Blender. The thing is, these scroll bars in the outliner and elsewhere in Blender are not resizable, so you can just do this one kind of scroll bar. However, the timeline and other animation editors have these things that you can click and drag to resize this scroll bar, and they were not having the same treatment of shrinking down. So now they do. So nice. Also, special attention was taken because now when you mouse over, even if you add the background completely transparent, Blender will show at least 20% of the background color. Always force it to show, so you know that you are in an area, and if you click on it, you're actually going to that frame. So cool. Small things, but thanks, John, for working on it, your patience with it. Harley made it so on Linux you can use large mouse cursors. On Windows and Mac we use platform-specific mouse cursors, but on Linux we didn't have large cursors, but now we do. As in the big ones for high DPI, high resolutions. Then Quentin made a change that unifies the panel name for the collection. So the collections used to be collection properties used to have a panel called restrictions, which is weird because they are restrictions. I think the name used to come from the restrictions toggles here in the outliner, but elsewhere in Blender we call it visibility, right? You can, even though selectable is weird, you don't see this. It's weird, selectable invisibility. However, it is consistent with the rest of Blender, and also adds one extra option which is not exposed. It wasn't exposed, which is this checkbox, the exclude. Internally it's called exclude from view layer, but the checkbox is inverted in the UI. I know it's weird, but this is how it's done. So now when you click on it, it's the same as having it here option, and expose, just making things a bit more consistent. Then the curves edit mode menus have been updated, adding entries for operators missing in the curves edit mode context. Oh nice, this is part of the bringing, again, when you have the new curves data block, now it will show the menus accordingly. Show not found icon when something is not found. Nice. So this is when something goes wrong, you will see this. So you should never see this. And if you see this, please report the bug, because this should never happen. That's why it's red and ugly. And next. Andre Kling says, disabled viewport should be visible by default. Do you agree or disagree? What Andre means is that Blender by default should have this viewport toggle enabled by default. Do you agree or disagree? Because, yeah, I mean, maybe people say, yeah, put all of them on. Yeah, but then you don't have space. People with small screens are not going to be able to see here, especially because the cutoff point is really ugly and Blender doesn't add any way to know, like ellipses or a gradient would be nice maybe. So you know that there's no more room, maybe a gradient here to back, no, but no, to gray. But yeah, what do you think? Because the selectability is also something that people use a lot and they want to have enabled by default, so we can have both. Which one? Agree? Viewport should be there, and then selectability too, or not? It depends. Next, USD. 3 changes, 3 items. 1. Improve sanitation of names with leading digits. Yep, because USD identifiers cannot start with a digit. They will be turned into an underscore. This is a bit unfortunate with names like 1 or 2 because both become underscores in the output file. The change here makes it so leading digits will be treated separately and turn names like 1 or 2 into _1 and _2 respectively. Nice. Capsule 1 and cylinder 1 shapes to USD importer. they have been added to USD importing. Another also by Maxime and Jesse, committed by Jesse. Nice. Additional tests will be added afterwards. And last but not least, import skeletal animations as slotted actions. The USD importer was still creating legacy action, which are no longer supported in Blender 4.4. This commit updates the code to produce slotted actions instead. Nice. Blender with Blender. And the last two changes are: 1. Undo. Add explicit filtering for IDs and RNA structs that are marked as skippable. What does it mean? Well, in the past, around the time of 2.8, think 2018? No, release. That was July 2019. It was introduced the idea of filtering out certain editor changes inside the paint modes and edit modes, so they are not marked as undo. So when you change a toggle in a property, for example, or in a brush property, so they don't take an undo step, which if they are limited, then they can mess your workflow. This commit is the first in a series to attempt to refine this behavior so that only certain editor settings are filtered out from the undo stack. In total, this does the following: adds the brush data block to the list of IDs that do not have undo pushes. This means if you change a brush setting inside the image editor, it no longer causes an undo push. So if you are change the size of a brush, it's not gonna make an undo push. This is great. I think this is awesome. Would probably be best, but probably too complex, to have a dedicated undo stack for UI changes, because sometimes it happens. Sometimes maybe you don't remember what was the change that you did, or sometimes you, I don't know, merge two windows and you want to undo that, but this is not stored on undo, it's by design, because undo is only for data things that you can mess up with your data. So how do other software deal with this? Is it a different undo stack? Maybe control, instead of control set, could be like control shift alt set. So you do a clone and then undo. How do I report errors, says shared triplet? Go to help, report a bug, and this is the best way because it will take you to this website where you need to log in with your Blender ID, which you can create in id.blender.org, and then just report the issues. And as you can see, doing it from Blender adds a bunch of data here that you have to replace. This, you don't change this, change where it says please fill out a short description of the error here, and this, everything that is in square brackets. All right. Make, do the claw. And what is the last change? Another one by Aras. If it's Aras in the name, it has speed up in the subject of the commit. Speed up video sequencer. Speed up render result by avoiding memory clear. What's the speed up? It goes rendering a 1920 by 1080 resolution movie with video sequence editor using float pixel data. The average time goes from 6.8 milliseconds down to 3.8 milliseconds. Just boom, much faster. Nice. Apparently it was doing a bit more work than needed. These two lines make Blender much faster, sequencer much faster. Thank you, Aras, for making Blender better. All right, let's see. I asked you something in the chat, so I should be polite and look at the chat before going into the questions sections. So it's more useful. It's okay. People agree with having the eye in the viewport in the toggle in the outliner. It would be great to have the ability to animate, disable, and render. Yeah, that would be awesome. Not easy though. Thing about viewport is that it's what is what add-ons modify to hide objects, and users who don't know have a hard time finding out they are not in the viewport. But then that's to add-ons fault, not Blender. Add-ons should fix that. However, I do use the viewport more often because hiding it with the viewport icon actually removes it from calculations from the, and the eye is just visual. Viewport exclude, yeah, yes. I heard a new simulation system was coming to 4.5. I wish. Her simulation system is one of the projects planned for this year, but 4.5, well, maybe. We'll see. I don't know. But it is planned for 2025. It's just not sure that it would land in 4.5 as far as I know. Otherwise, we would see things already. What version are we talking about? Every version has the help report bug. And by the way, everything that I show here on screen, I'm using the latest Blender, as in latest not stable, latest daily build, experimental build. All right. Adas is the name, speed up is the game. Nice one. All right, let's hello chat. All right, let's go to what's new in what's new. What are the questions the community are asking? How many comments? Well, 14 comments. Okay, let's try to be quick-ish because this is, no matter how many commits there are, it's always 2 hours long. Gee. But hey, it goes every 2 weeks, so you can watch 1 hour today and 1 hour next week. Ritam says, hi Pablo, I wanted to know why holding Alt on multiple selected image texture does not change the UDIM to Alt image texture. I have to manually do it for all textures. If I duplicate the same texture and hold Alt to change the UDIM, it works for both. But it does not work for the texture I imported with Node Wrangler. On multiple selected image texture does not work. Sounds like you could report this as a bug, just to investigate this better. Yeah. Also, Node Wrangler is an add-on, but it is built in Blender, so it gets a special treatment for bug fixes. I think. Daniela Palm says, hi Pablo, yay for Flow. Yes, I will leave it at that. I'm sure comments will be some with Flow comments. I was wondering about Vulkan integration in Blender. It seems to be coming along very well. Do you think we will be seeing it out of experimental this year? Yes, didn't I mention this last time, because I discussed with well, I was during lunch talking to Jeroen Bakker, the main developer working on this, and sometimes only developer for working on this on Vulkan support. That the idea, if everything goes according to plan, the idea would be to give it more visibility to Vulkan for 4.5, so more people test it. Hopefully even removing the experimental tag. The problem is removing the experimental tag means that people would consider it done. So if you're interested in it, try using it like now and explore and mention issues that you find, especially if you are keen to share some more details. You will find this setting under the interface, under system, not on a Mac, but on Windows and on Linux. You will see a graphics display panel where you can choose OpenGL, which is the default, and Vulkan. I was even considering to propose to show this in the splash screen. So the first time you run the splash screen in the settings, you could show in the wizard, we could show like to let people choose. But yeah, ideally should be out of experimental this year. If everything goes super well and more people help in the project, could even be available for 5.0. Default even. Oh, no. Or maybe, who knows? This is the thread by Volk. Emi Martinez says, hi Pablo, I wanted to ask you some bugs that weren't included in the winter of quality, especially the object mapping rotating texture bug. It's been 10 years. Is there a plan to solve all bugs that affect daily use? Object mapping is often used to project as a texture. want to ask you about simulation nodes. Okay, so first thing, this is 10 years old. Has this been discussed in the past recently? 5 months ago. I use the vector rotator as a workaround. Brecht moved this, so it is under, and people know about this, it's been moved to cycles features in the render. So it is marked as a feature, apparently. Yeah. Cycles box mapping not working, rotated texture coordinates. Yeah, I mean, Brecht is the creator and the main developer behind Cycle, so if he knows, then I'm sure he's aware of it. Unfortunately, yeah. What I mean, you can do, it's, for example, what Christoph did here. Like, this is a useful comment that also helps, like, hey, don't forget about us. But it's useful if you detect that, okay, this is still broken in 4.5 and is really important for my workflow. Thanks. Those kind of comments, I think people are not gonna be mad about those. The comments that are like, this is unacceptable, 10 years, where is all my money going? And Oscar winning film software. What? No. The next question by you, Emmy, says, is there a no, also wanted to ask you about the simulation nodes and physics nodes project, since they weren't mentioned in this year's roadmap. Well, they were, right? Like hair stuff. If you go to blender.org, then go scroll down the cat, 2 cats, and then the project node system hair dynamics. This is physics. So it was mentioned. Are they really not being worked? No, it is the plan. Should I keep waiting or use the old particle system? Use the old particle system. It won't go away until there is a replacement for it. The old particle system is buggy, but it works. I myself use it still. I know I shouldn't say that as a Blender employee. I shouldn't. No one's gonna get mad if I say it, but I use it. I use, of course. If there is no replacement for it, and the geometry node system doesn't offer the same quality of life of the asset of the particle system, then it's a valid thing to say. I also wanted to ask you about donating to Blender. Is it better to donate to Blender or join the Blender Studio? Is it the same? Which one would you recommend? Well, Amy, depends. Both contribute to Blender. My salary comes from Blender, the Blender Development Fund. The salary of most developers comes from the Development Fund. However, those developers are also helping artists and fixing issues that are reported by the studio team here, and the Blender Studio team also gives back a lot to Blender with tutorials, with documentation for the release notes. So it's all one big family, really. The money is split. There is 2 donations because of that, because the Blender Studio, you could say that everything that is in the studio, even though at the end of a project, usually the characters become free for people to download, like the one from Einar, I bet the ones from Pets Project are gonna be at some point. The ones from Elders, from the Sprite Frights, are also free. And the idea, if in a perfect world, Blender, and it was discussed here even internally, to make the Blender Studio website completely free and unify the donations. But yeah, it wouldn't be fair for people who just want to donate and they don't care what the people here are making with the studio. But yeah, a ton of development was done. For example, for Project Gold, light linking was a big thing that was added to Blender. And it was mainly, well, it was in the roadmap, but it's also because the team here needed it for Project Gold. And historically, the open movie projects have contributed to Blender development immensely, like Cosmos with a bunch of physics, hair, and rendering, Bipopani rendering, Sintel 2, motion tracking for Tissue Steel. So I would say, which one I would recommend? Well, if you only want to donate to Blender and you don't care about learning new things, or you don't see any use for the Blender Studio, then contribute to the development fund at fund.blender.org. If you think you can find use of the blog items, the assets, the project assets that the team are sharing here, these then you can join the Blender Studio, and you would also be contributing to Blender that way. Next. Hi Pablo, are there any plans for section tools? Section tool in architectural visualization is very much necessary. And also export section to DXF. I don't know what a section tool is. What is a section tool? Thanks. And if there is any plans, I haven't read about it. Actually, wasn't familiar with the tool. Is that available also as an add-on? So next, Namnabud said, any news on non-destructive rigging? Rigging, no, zero news on that. As far as I know, the team working on the animation on module, which are the ones that could work on rigging, are now busy with other projects, wrapping up the action slots. And well, Sivren, the main developer of the project, is now shifting gears to online assets for a while. And yeah, this would have to wait for a bit. Small team, again, join the fund. That would also always help. But yeah, small team, they have to shift gears all the time. Big no here, so it's bad to form show off work in progress. Don't click, please. Come on, you can't say don't click. But super nice to see already. Bump correction algorithm to respect better normal maps is a huge improvement. Improvement in the huge thing that you came up with this. I'm not sure if a work in progress pull request should request 3 main developers, as in a principal developer, architecture, and like 3 developers. I think it's better to to maybe if it's still work in progress, just work on it. Maybe ask in the chat of the module for feedback. I'm sure some people will like to give feedback, but yeah, it's super nice to see you working on this. Next, not a real question, just your game. I think you want to bring it to Steam. That would be awesome, but you think about something small. Your game. Or something like a free tire and just like an empty 5% for some kind of add-on skin, whatever. It's just to give the people a way to spend directly. Oh. Well, I mean, it's a Blender open movie game. But I think people are used to pay. I mean, the game, you mean, I think you're talking about this game, right? I'm not involved in the project, but everything will be open source. You can download it from here. But maybe if there was also an option to buy it from Steam, and in Steam, it would have a giant banner that says, you can get this for free at studio.blender.org. But you can also buy it if you want to donate. Although some percentage will go to Steam. I don't know. Would it make sense? Because it is super nice to have the Steam library and just have the game there, just double click. So much more convenient than downloading whatever people are going to export from this. I would mention it to the team here, just what they think. Where was I? Oh no, I closed this. Oh no. Did people... Okay, no new comments at least. But yeah, it would be actually super nice. Supported edition. And also because it... yes, the development fund is great. However, the pay options here are not always available the same as in Steam. So even though if you want to donate, sometimes the payment and Steam has it all figured out already. So I'm gonna bring it up to the studio team. Hey Pablo, do you think there could be like a complete universal node graph for a complete Blender file in the future? Why not? Like a scene or collection nodes. But yeah. Blender should have FSpy. It's not even hello. Hi, Trilok. Have FSpy features inbuilt for VFX because original creators are not developing that software anymore. You should mention that to the official creator to bring it into Blender. What if the Gabriel, not even Hola. What if the camera tab was always active showing? You could select the active camera from there. If there isn't a camera on the scene, it's grayed out. Way better than having to find the select camera. Yes, I actually wanted to add that to Amaranth to test. But there is you don't have to look for the camera. There is an operator for that, which is in select active camera. You can add this to quick favorites. Select active camera would always select the camera, the active camera. So yeah, it could be interesting to have always visible, like a camera manager. Hi Pablo, says Nuno. Glad to see you back and congrats to the Blender regarding flow. It's amazing. Just wanted to give a call out for this bug that is 4 years old. Basically, the skin modifier is not compatible with geometry nodes. This is a significant limitation as a skin modifier. Also, the algorithm is quite good and useful for many purposes. So the skin modifier is not compatible with geometry nodes. So it's a 4-year-old bug, and the last time was 8 minutes ago. Thanks for the report 4 years ago. Unfortunately, it's not trivial to fix, and I believe it. When Hans says this, although maybe, I mean, it's been 4 years, right? Maybe Hans found a way, or there is a new ways of making this work. So it's more of a combination of the assumptions and design from Blender that doesn't consider the new mesh data that can be created from scratch tuning evaluation. So I'm going to call this a known issue. It's called the object. So 2 years ago, 7 months ago, it was changed to another modeling. So I think what you did is fine, but yes, don't keep your hopes up. Every time there is this kind of incompatibility with geometry nodes, sometimes there is the discussion, okay, should it be a node? Should it become, you know, something else and integrate it differently to Blender as an asset? Or like, yes, there's always that question. So that being said, I am running out of voice. It's been 2 hours. Why is it always 2 hours? I hope you had a bit of fun today and seeing what's new in Blender, and also got to answer some of your questions. There was a bit more of hanging out today, which is always a good thing. The reason to make this live is that you are here with me hanging out. Otherwise, I would just make a recorded video. The next time we meet, Blender 4.4 will be out, or actually it's Tuesday. Once will there be a live stream? Because I will be busy with the actual release. Good question. So maybe we can skip that. Well, I can say that, okay, no, I commit to it, but release dates are always tricky. So maybe we can skip that one, because 4.4 will be out. There will be a video in the channel. I heard a cookie is working on it. Jonathan Lample has been giving us beautiful videos on everything that is new. This release will be, even with company lately, this release might be trickier because there's less new things, but there's a bunch of bug fixes and some geometry nodes, a lot of animation stuff, so maybe we'll see. Other than that, I hope you have a good time. Thanks for tuning in, and keep making Academy award winning, not Academy, any award winning films and projects, and share them with the world. I have to check with Gint. I should have asked him for this blend file of the splash screen before he won a freaking Oscar. It will be. I we're joking with the other day with Francesco. It's like, okay, so now he won an Oscar, so his email inbox is probably pretty busy, and I will be like, hey, do you remember us, please? Can you give us the blend file and make sure it renders with Eevee next? And sorry, you forgot to enable pack textures, you know, like it's all pink, and the guy is there with the Oscar. So yeah, I should have contacted him before. Anyways, also licensing might be tricky. Yes. I hope you had fun. We'll meet again next time for the Blender Today live, and watch your ear holes, because because it's actually fairly low volume. I can actually make it slightly louder for you in your ear pleasure. I should be listening to. Nice. All right. Bye, everyone. Have a awesome time. Thanks for tuning in.